as soon as I started talking about it, it's just well, hello. It's time for Uninformed Movie Reviews, the podcast where we review movies in a podcast format. Welcome back, everybody.
Well said.
Yeah, it is episode 3, y'all. And today we're going to talk about Judd Apatow, a director, if you will.
Yeah, we got to make this one decent, fellas. This is our Revenge of the Sith. It is the redeeming quality of this so far prequel trilogy that we have.
Oh my gosh.
You know, I feel like that's a good way to put it, Danny.
No pressure at all.
So who are we going to start with today in this ranking of Edgar Wright? Oh, or Edgar Wright. I'm thinking episode 2. I'm on Attack of the Clones right now. Wait, what were we saying, Frank?
To stop living in the past, David. We have to
My
move
bad.
on. We're doing a new thing.
I did just want to clarify, as we clarify every episode, today we're talking about the Judd Apatow directed movies, because he's been a producer on a ton of movies.
A ton. Yeah.
And I think those movies have his footprint, but not quite the same as the ones that he directs.
Yeah, a very different feel for sure.
Anywho.
With your clarification, why don't you just get us going with your number 5?
I'd love to. My number 5, I placed. Well, you know what? I'm sorry. Let's back up 1 second. Let's just say what the movies are first. Maybe this would be helpful. You know what I mean? So people know what we're going to be ranking.
I guess if you want to be helpful.
Yeah. So today we have The 40-Year-Old Virgin, Knocked Up, Funny People, This Is 40, and Trainwreck. And Trainwreck is my number 5, his most recent one until, King of Staten Island comes out at the end of the week.
I concur.
Yeah, and you know what? I've got the same thing, guys.
Well, I wanted to get the obvious joke out of the way, you know what I mean? But watching Trainwreck was like watching a plane crash or something.
Oh.
It was rough.
Another synonymous disastrous event.
Yeah. It wasn't so much like not being able to look away because of the fascination of the catastrophe, but like we were obligated to as
I had to watch it.
I just had to watch it.
Go ahead. No, you go ahead. I was just going to say this again, this movie, I thought, I thought I had never seen this movie. Then it started after I had rented it and I was like, oh no, I had seen this movie. I just blocked it out of my memory.
Oh, that's the worst.
So certain scenes started coming up, and this movie reminds me a lot of the problems that Anchorman 2 had, in which it is more so focused on its cameos than it is substance. You know what I mean? Than its lead characters actually doing something worthwhile. Don't get me wrong. I think Bill Hader is the saving grace of this movie for sure. But it is just, I cannot stand Amy Schumer.
That's a big part of the movie, because all of these movies that we watched, they all hinge on the charisma of the lead role. And Amy Schumer is the one that I'm least down with. So maybe I'm just biased because I just don't like Amy Schumer. But if you haven't seen Trainwreck, just a quick synopsis for everybody. Trainwreck is basically about Amy Schumer. She works for a magazine writing tabloid-like articles. She's dating this guy at the beginning who it was really weird. It was a weird artistic choice. It was just her in all these scenes. But it was supposed to be portrayed that she was dating some muscular guy. It was really strange.
It's probably because you couldn't see him.
That's what it was. I just couldn't see him. But anyways, Amy Schumer's dating John Cena. And she's very promiscuous. She has a lot of open relationships all over the city. But then, of course, she meets Bill Hader. And who doesn't love cute, smart, handsome Dr. Bill Hader?
I mean, he's fantastic, to be fair.
Yeah, and he works in sports medicine, which is where all these cameos come from. So many professional athletes.
LeJon Brames is throughout the entire movie as his friend.
Yeah, LeBron James is in a ton of it. And just to round it out,
that relationship between him and LeBron James, that's worth it. Not worth watching the whole movie, but that's the one nice part.
It's pretty good.
Yeah, that stuff did work pretty well. And she's there.
Scores on him. Ooh, yeah.
Yeah, that's a great scene. Amy Schumer, though, she is writing an article about Bill Hader, and that's why they're introduced to each other. But you know what? LeBron James, the scenes are funny and everything, but he's just not a very good actor. And that's like, it hits it over and over again this movie because John Cena, his scenes, LeBron James does a better job than John Cena. And John Cena's actually like been in other movies, and that's what's confusing to me.
Yeah, John Cena's in that movie. I don't know if it's actually called Cock Blockers or just Blockers, but there's like an insignia of a cock on it. You know what I mean? Like a rooster. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I don't know what it was officially titled. Anyway, he's in that movie playing a dad, essentially the role that he's playing in this movie. But it's just, it's too forced, to be honest. And like some of the scenes, like with him in the movie theater, like starting that fight with that one dude, it's over the top, and it doesn't know when to stop. Like there's no good comedic timing in that. But I have to say something really quick. I have a feeling that back in 2015, if my memory serves correct, there were talks of a new Space Jam movie coming along with LeBron James. And I have a feeling that a lot of the reason it didn't get made was because people got a screen test with LeBron James having some dialogue as a third-party character in this movie.
And just America as a whole was like, we don't need to see more LeBron.
Well, I think that's still on the table. I feel like that I keep hearing about that. It just has gone nowhere. Maybe it's not, but I kind of want to watch Space Jam and see what Michael Jordan's performance is like. I don't remember at all.
It's bad.
I mean,
it's still super bad.
And it's hard to act with like something that's not there. And for somebody who's like not an actor, I can only imagine how hard that would be.
It's weird to think that Michael Jordan was doing some like pioneering like cinema tricks when it was happening. You know what I mean? Like Michael Jordan was on the forefront of talking to green screen tennis balls and stuff. You know what I mean? Like, what would that be like now?
Well, you know, I got to give credit though, because I would say that like Who Framed Roger Rabbit came years before Space Jam and was kind of similar. That's also great. But there was, man, I don't remember Space Jam at all now. Were they all animated or were some of them CGI? I feel like the monsters.
Some of it was CGI. Yeah, the Monstars are CGI. I'm pretty sure.
That's right. Wow. That's been.
Dude, you gotta watch Space Jam. Space Jam's still great. I think that Bill Murray is the best part of that movie.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, that's fair.
We should wait till Michael Jordan's birthday and then we'll review Space Jam, whatever that is. You know, I just want to give credit. There was a few scenes in this movie that I thought were pretty funny. I especially like the opening scene with the dad trying to explain like polygamy using that doll. Like I thought that was a pretty funny start of the movie. But then, yeah, I mean, I agree. A lot of the timing just doesn't feel right. And I think part of it is that, and I mean, I'm going to be saying this so much this episode, Judd Apatow goes so hard on the improv, on the just like, oh, go ahead and just, you know, let's just have this line go back 7 or 8 times and we'll use like 3 of the funniest takes and then put it in the movie. And that sort of works in movies like Knocked Up, where it's all of these super hilarious actors. But in this, it's like John Cena doesn't have the comedic talent to just keep a funny improv going and make it seem natural. Like, yeah. So Bill Hader pulls it off, but a lot of the other cast doesn't. And that's definitely a little painful.
He needs to rope it in for the comedic timing, I think. You know what I mean? Like, give it some structure for these people who aren't like trained in improv. Mm-hmm. But like, surprisingly, this movie has like something like 78%, maybe 80% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Really? I feel like that's way too high.
Yeah, those were my thoughts.
Well, you know what? I think we are like literally the opposite of the target audience for this movie.
This was like the peak of Amy Schumer just getting her show, I think, on Comedy Central. Like she was just blowing up. But I'm in the same camp as you and Frank, I imagine. It's just like she's not funny to me.
Yeah. If we were a group of like 3 rambunctious ladies and we're like, oh, Amy Schumer, she's so inappropriate. You know what I mean? We'd love this movie. We'd be eating it up. But that's just not the way it's going.
What does Michelle think of Amy Schumer? I want to know.
She hates Amy Schumer. She refused to watch this movie. This is the only movie out of the whole channel's history that Michelle's been like, I'm not down. Like we watched Holy Mountain, you know what I mean? And she was like, I'll sit through that. But I draw the line at Amy Schumer rom-coms. I'm not touching it. So she was not happy. And this
you had to watch it by yourself.
Yeah, I did. And I watched it this morning. It was painful. It's written by Amy Schumer too, which I thought was interesting. It's this actually Judd Apatow has no writing credit to this movie. It's just Amy Schumer.
That probably explains why I found it so unfunny.
Yeah, I mean,
I just like Danny said, I find her very unfunny. And like going into it, I thought like, okay, well, it's an Amy Schumer movie, but I'm sure like somebody else wrote it. I didn't do any research. The whole time I was just like, eh.
yeah.
I don't know what it is, but it's something about Amy Schumer's persona, but then also her appearance that reminds me of a certain acquaintance that you and Frank and I
I know
all
exactly
know.
what you're talking about. I thought about it today. I was like, this could be her movie. This could be like her early 20s, the movie. Except a lot less glamorous and not John Cena. But we don't need to be naming people like that.
That would be
No.
us.
That is so mean. Okay, well, I mean, I'm good on Trainwreck if you guys are. I mean, this is like if Larry the Cable Guy made a movie that was just hilarious and like dialed into his audience, there'd be people who love it, but it would be none of the three of us. You know what I mean? And it's just the way that works. Like if Ron White wrote a movie, I'm down. If like I don't know, Amy Schumer.
I would watch a Ron White movie.
If Amy Schumer's old boyfriend Anthony Jeselnik wrote a movie, I'd be so in.
I'd have to skip it.
Yeah, Frank would not like it.
You don't like Jeselnik, huh?
He rubs me the wrong way, man. I hate how much he loves himself. I hate it.
He loves himself. Oh, he sniffs his own farts, dude.
I bet Amy Schumer didn't like that either.
I hate the way he, like just smiles after a joke. Like that was the best joke that anybody's ever told.
Yeah, and he doesn't even say that with a smile. He literally says it.
Yeah,
That's a great joke. I love Jeselnik. Anyways, Danny, why don't you give us your number 4, man? Let's keep this list growing.
I feel like this might surprise some people. Are y'all ready for your butts to be rocked?
Yeah, rock this.
Yeah.
Mine surprised me actually after rewatching. It's the 40-Year-Old Virgin.
My number 4 is the 40-Year-Old Virgin.
Hey,
Danny and I are 2 for 2.
This is where it's gonna get kind of weird. Because my number 4 is also the 40-Year-Old Virgin.
Interesting.
Dang.
Y'all, this is a channel first. Both of our bottoms match up.
We got
2 for
matching
2.
bottoms.
Yeah.
Our cheeks fit perfectly within each other right now.
Wow. Okay. We're carrying this really far. Well, this seems like a good time to segue to Character Limit Extended. This is our segment where we just talk about our CLE from our last review. This one's 40-Year-Old Virgin. You can check it out on our YouTube channel. I mean, the 40-Year-Old Virgin, I feel like everyone has seen this movie, but I mean, the plot is essentially Steve Carell is a grown man baby. He works at an electronics store. His coworkers, who are all kind of scoundrels, find out he's a virgin, and then they make it a point to make him lose his virginity. And that's like more or less the whole movie.
Yeah.
This, it's funny to think of something that really dates this movie other than like a lot of the comedy in it is like this, when I see like what they were portraying with Steve Carell working at an electronics store, it wasn't a Best Buy. It was clearly a Circuit City.
Yeah, dude, that is a Circuit City.
Which is a remnant of our past.
No.
This is a writing debut for Steve Carell, though.
And this was like big news. This is kind of like what propelled The Office into being a huge success.
Yeah. I think The Office was in season 2.
Yeah.
And they were worried that the season 3 wouldn't happen.
Yeah, but now they had a big movie star on this giant successful movie, and then The Office won Emmys in the 3rd season. So it was like, I don't know, this was perfect timing for Office fans. And I remember this movie being funny when I was a kid. And this is a great example of just comedy not aging well, man. I don't know if it's all the homophobic jokes or I don't know if it's just like...
There's a lot of racist jokes.
Yeah, it is
racist jokes.
a lot of it. It's a lot of like things that we thought were really funny when we were 11 to 13. Sometimes right now, but it's just like so heavy-handed. You know what I mean? It's constantly all the time
It
slapping.
really is. It's like I mean, I don't know. Like if you look at it now and if someone was telling these jokes, it would probably be like some dude that's just like bending your ear while you're at a bus stop or something like that. You really don't want to talk to. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah, for reals.
Where it gets like way too inappropriate really, really fast, like immediately.
Yeah.
Tells you all kinds of things about his wife you like had no intention of knowing.
Exactly.
God, person.
This reminds me of one of those movies where it's like a middle schooler's portrayal of what being an adult is like. Like if you're like 30, you're like, none of this happens. But if you're like 14, this is what you imagine the future would be like. And that's, I don't know, it's cringy. It was hard to watch again.
I think this is one of the first film roles for Seth Rogen too, if I remember correctly.
Oh, it might be.
Like big film roles.
And he's like just a longtime buddy with Judd Apatow, like them doing Freaks and Geeks and Undeclared together. Which after watching all these movies, I was like, man, those are some of my favorite things that Judd Apatow's done.
Yeah, Freaks and Geeks is awesome.
Yeah, those shows I think outweigh his movies by a huge amount. I have a couple fun facts for this movie. Judd Apatow did a little bit of work on Anchorman, and that's where he met Steve. And Adam McKay was using Steve like in a very impromptu way, like I Love Lamp, stuff like that. Just like give me weird lines, and Steve was just so bizarre and hilarious with it that Apatow really liked it, and you see a lot of that in this movie. Like you see Anchorman and that kind of humor. I think Anchorman really started off a lot of this kind of thing. But man, I feel like Anchorman holds up way better than this.
It really does, and I think a lot of it is because it's just goofy. It's dumb. You know what I mean? It's not so sharp. Like, I don't want to use this word because I feel like it's something my grandma would use to describe something, but it's not so nasty. You know what I mean? It's not nasty humor. It's kind of like just dorky and off the wall Anchorman. At least I think that's why Adam McKay movies kind of hold up, because they're just out of nowhere. Sometimes they're dumb, but like some of his dialogue is just hilarious.
They somehow don't feel as dated either. Like Step Brothers is just like a timeless idea. Like here's two people who have to move in together. You know what I mean? Except it's just exaggerated because they're both grown men.
Right? Like treating them like they're 14-year-old.
Did you guys watch the unrated version of 40-Year-Old Virgin?
I did.
No, I did not.
Well, I don't know if it's in the theatrical cut, but there's like one of, I don't know, it feels like 3 or 4. It feels like there's so many strip club scenes in all these movies. But the big cameo in this one is Stormy Daniels, first mistress, Stormy Daniels.
Oh my God.
And she also shows up in Knocked Up, and she plays a stripper in both of them. And this is even crazier. I don't know if you guys knew about this, but in 2018, on an Ellen DeGeneres show interview, Seth Rogen said that while they were filming this movie, Stormy Daniels told all of them about her then very recent affair with Donald Trump. So Seth Rogen was like, I heard this story years ago working on 40-Year-Old Virgin. So this isn't something that just like came up. You know what I mean?
Oh, man. That must have been right when he was hanging out with Jeffrey Epstein, too.
Yeah, probably. and Harvey Weinstein, too, maybe. Who knows? Who knows how this goes?
It's probably always right after, you know what I mean? Because they were so close friends.
I want to point something out that I think this movie, it's with all of them, except maybe Funny People, I think, kind of does a little bit. All these movies are shot so flat and so uninteresting. There's like nothing creative done with camera work. And it was so noticeable after watching all those Edgar Wright movies where so much of the comedy is told through like editing. And this one is just like, listen to these people talk. And that's where all the humor's from.
The quality of, like, you can see the graininess in the film of the 2005, of this version, at least from what I've seen. Like when I was rewatching, I was like, wow, this looks like it was shot in like a handy cam or something.
Maybe it was, I don't know.
Yeah.
That is one of the things I definitely noticed. It just like visibly didn't look good. It wasn't pleasant to look at. Especially like the interior shots. All the lighting seems just off.
I do still love the cast of this movie, though. I mean, you have like the core cast, right? You got Seth Rogen, you got Paul Rudd, obviously Steve Carell, even his wife Nancy Carell is in here.
Yeah, she shows up, and she's
Jenna
really
Fisher
funny.
has a cameo.
Yeah, I saw that.
Elizabeth Banks, I forgot, is like the hot girl at one point.
Well, also Leslie Mann, you know what I mean?
Leslie
She's in
Mann.
almost all of these, except for Trainwreck, Judd Apatow's wife.
He must have got done with that. I wonder if she'll be in The King of Staten Island.
I don't know. I'm curious to see what happens there.
Maybe John Cena was the one man Judd Apatow was uncomfortable seeing his wife kiss on camera. That's kind of my thing, but that's too much.
I got to get Amy Schumer for this one.
Yeah.
Wow, this movie that movie would have been way different if it was Leslie Mann instead of Amy Schumer in that movie.
Oh yeah. Although I think Leslie Mann might be a little too old now for the role that they're talking about.
Wow, that's
Oh,
David.
sorry. I mean, people get too old. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's good.
People get too old.
There's a quote that comes up in Knocked Up that just makes me think of what you just said right now.
Yeah. Yeah. One of my favorite parts of Knocked Up. Well, Frank, why don't you take us to the next? What do you have for 3, man?
What do I have for 3? That's a really good question, and we'll find out when I unlock my iPhone here. Got This Is 40.
That's my number 3 as well.
Oh.
That's also my number 3.
Oh my god, guys, I'm so excited to pull it off. I hope
What is happening?
I am so stoked.
I feel bad. Like, if we don't have a continuing series like this, then it's just going to be like every time I try and win the lottery and I listen to the Powerball. I get 2 numbers and I start thinking I'm going to quit my job.
Well, Frank, tell us about This Is 40, man. Why'd you put it at 3?
So This Is 40 for me. Well, I'm going to go ahead and say the main reason is because I liked the other 2 movies left on the list more than this one. And the 2 under it, I liked this one more than that. So that's the main reason how it ended up at number 3. But if you want to get into specifics.
That's so sarcastic, but I agree with you 100%. That's like exactly what I thought.
Well, this just happens to be the 3rd movie I liked.
Yeah, and we talked about this before, and I just want to go into this saying, like, in both of the episodes we've done before this, we've all talked about like how tough a lot of these decisions were, and I didn't feel that feeling once throughout this entire thing. I was like, no, yeah, I like this is better than that, obviously, and okay, well, yeah, this is the best one. It was very easy for me, but This Is 40, delightful. We pick up with one of the couples from Knocked Up several years later as they're turning 40. Leslie Mann and Paul Rudd and Judd Apatow and Leslie Mann's daughters are back and bigger and obsessed with loss at each other's throats. Really enjoyable family dynamic because that's like a crazy family. They keep a lot of the continuity through. Like we were talking about when we were watching it, they still have Leslie Mann's character as like an anti-vaxxer. She's still like a crazy person, like crazy mom. No Seth Rogen and Katherine Heigl cameos, which is an unfortunate, and by unfortunate, I'm mainly talking about Seth Rogen.
I was just going to say that.
Yeah, I am really bummed that Seth Rogen didn't show up in this either.
He gets
That
one
would've been
mention,
really
you
nice.
know what I mean? Like
It's
I
really
have
one.
this, marijuana cookie that Ben gave me for Christmas.
Yeah,
It's one interesting like success story for like a spin-off sequel from a movie that just is just as successful and a totally different movie.
Yeah, because it is exactly like a spin-off. Yeah, they are the Chachi in that universe, if you will.
yeah, it's definitely not a continual thing. And you know what? I think this movie really nails like the dramedy genre that Judd Apatow really works in the best. And this one and the remaining 2 movies we have to rank feel the most like that, where it's kind of just about the dynamic of people. And this one almost doesn't even have a storyline. It's kind of an aimless movie a little bit.
It's just like Seinfeld.
I feel like, yeah, it's a movie about nothing. It really is.
Well, it's kind of funny because that reminds me of a joke that Adam Sandler's character George Simmons has in Funny People. And he's talking about like in your 20s you're all like screw my parents, like I'm gonna be my own person. In your 30s you're like screw the president, I hate that guy. And your 40s are just like I'm hungry. It's this like same kind of they hit that point, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Kind of going along.
Yeah. A lot of the story in this comes from like the problems that you deal with being in marriage and having a family, being at 40, and like it's true. Like, you know, there's the prospect of affairs and like the fights of why you're even together, and I really love that about this movie. There's not a predictable storyline, and even though it's so monotonous and everyday, it's actually interesting in that way.
Yeah, I think so too, man. I also I think Judd Apatow is kind of like Death Cab for Cutie in the sense that at certain points in his life, he writes a story for that time period. You know what I mean? And as he gets older, it's like a little bit different. This movie came out when Leslie Mann was 40, which I thought was really funny. And Paul Rudd was 43. That guy is he's a
Ageless.
fountain of youth. Yeah.
So cute.
Him and Keanu Reeves, man.
Yeah. Although Keanu was looking a little old in that Bill and Ted trailer. I watched it today.
Oh, I still need to check it out.
Oh man.
You told me about it this morning.
Quick sidecar. I will say, guys, speaking of Keanu Reeves, rewatched The Matrix recently and Matrix Reloaded. I am super stoked for Matrix 4.
Are you
Oh,
gonna
that'll
buy
be
a
cool.
trench coat?
Yeah.
You can't wear those in movie theaters anymore.
No. You can't wear them most places now.
Yeah. Way to go, Columbine. But oh man, what were we talking about? Oh yeah, sorry. I just gotta throw this out here. I love Keanu Reeves. He seems like a nice guy. I love so many movies that he's in. He's just an awful actor. And the clunky line delivery in the Bill and Ted trailer, just that movie looks like it's gonna be a little painful, to be
I
honest.
didn't see it,
That's
to be
exactly
honest.
how all the lines are delivered in Bill and Ted, man.
No, it's devolved. You know what I mean? Because when he was a kid, at least he had that kind of like Southern California, like surfer accent, like bro thing going on. And now he just sounds like John Wick pretending to be a teenager.
Guys, that's why I can't watch John Wick. I've seen all 3 and I don't like them.
Oh man, we gotta watch the third sometime soon, dude.
Yeah.
Oh, you haven't seen it?
No, I
No,
haven't
not yet.
yet.
Okay, like the action's cool. It's just action. That's it. Like there's
Yeah.
nothing to it.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
what I remember about from the first and the second ones. I love those movies.
That's what I love about him too. Sometimes I love it just a dumb action movie. But
It's
I
so
agree
dumb.
with you. His dialogue in those movies is rough too.
Whew. And then there's sometimes in those movies where they just, they animate the text that is being said on screen, and it's just so stupid.
I'm down. I'm 100% down, man.
Yeah, these are all selling points.
I did want to throw out, what was it? This is weird, man. In this movie, Paul Rudd references that he's like Ross from Friends. But Paul Rudd's in Friends. What?
I didn't know Paul Rudd's in Friends.
Yeah, he
Yeah.
ends up marrying Phoebe. It's super sweet.
He's a major character in the later seasons. Like the last couple seasons, he's in a lot of episodes of Friends.
Oh yeah, big time.
That is some Mandela effect stuff there, guys.
Yeah, for
The
real.
real ludicrous a la Too Fast, Too Furious situation.
Listening to Luda listening to Luda on the car radio.
Just me being a young teenager going, how is this happening?
Guys, this movie has a 52%.
This
on Rotten
one
Tomatoes.
is rated too low.
Fair.
I think maybe it doesn't connect if you don't like Knocked Up. I think that's part of it. It is a little too long. A lot of these are too long. They needed to be shortened. And maybe not shortened, just tightened. You know what I mean?
Just a
Like,
little
take
tighter.
take the runtime, shave off 20 minutes, and just tighten.
I think he tends to have like 3 acts in all of his scripts. Well, he wrote this one, you know what I mean? So like he has a 3-act script, but like the second act just ends up being like 2.75 worth of an act. And then it's like, and this is the 3rd act, and that's how it ends. It's just quick
I see what you're
rut
saying.
up.
That's
You
a
know what I
pretty good rundown of the feel for sure.
I read an interview with him, and he's talking about how people complain that his movies are too long, and he's just like, part of me cares, but not really. Like, people are going to go watch Avengers for 3 hours. You know, everyone expects comedies to be an hour and 40 minutes, and I feel like I just have more stuff that I want to tell. And
This is not as entertaining as the Avengers.
I don't think it's necessarily the length, but it's like the pacing. There's always a lull, like I don't know, 30, 40 minutes before the movie's over. That's just like, okay, where are we going with this, man? Like
To the point where on the later half of my watch, I could tell like, oh man, I bet at this point, like I still have another 30, 40 minutes left of this movie, dude. Not enough.
I think what doesn't work for this movie is that it's doing a lot to be relatable in a suburban setting. And I feel like a lot of people just don't deal with the problems that these two are dealing with because they're not rich.
Yeah, this is like a rich white people movie. Like,
Right.
have you been married and living in the suburbs?
Record labels going under.
Yeah, I guess
weird.
That's true. That's true, yeah. But I mean, still, it's like people who own their own businesses and everything, and are obviously raking in some money. I do gotta say, Megan Fox is really funny in this movie. I thought she gave a really good performance, way more than I would have expected. You know what I mean?
Guys, funny California moment. I ran into Megan Fox at Target. And And one of the targets here, I didn't even recognize her, but my girlfriend Raven has like this knack for spotting out people in public, and she's just like,
Raven.
we were walking to the garden section, and I take a right, and I'm like looking for puzzles because this is right when the pandemic started, and we were like needing some puzzles, and so I was like scanning the lane like super intently, and I get a hard punch in my right arm, and I'm just like, what? She's like, that's Megan Fox, and I was like, what? I look around, and I was like, holy shit, that's Megan Fox. It's great.
Get a look at those toe thumbs though.
That's what I tried to look for like the identifying feature, and I did see one. She pulled up her phone and I was like, that is a weird looking thumb.
Wow. That's like part of, like if you have a police record or something, they have like your tattoos written down, you know what I mean? That's like, check out these thumbs. They look insane. Well,
I agree with you though. She is actually surprisingly funny in this movie.
She's got some good comedic chops. I think she could nail something. I don't know if she's been in another comedy movie, but
Transformers.
They brought Jodie back from Knocked Up because that's just a good stupid character.
Oh yeah,
like a fun one to toss in. I really do enjoy her in both movies.
And Jason, played by Jason Segel, shows up too. The people who come back. I think it's funny to see these characters again, which is what Apatow was talking about when he wrote this. He was just like, I wanted to write a movie about getting older, and these characters, Pete and Debbie, just seemed like the right characters to focus on. And whenever I finish a movie, I would just love to go back and like focus on characters and just expand on them more. And you can kind of see how that comes across in his filmmaking too, because he's just really about kind of like sort of Tarantino-y, like it's a lot of banter and like just character personality, but I mean, it's not as well written. I'm just saying that.
Not near. I like that there's also John Lithgow and Albert Brooks are both sides of the fathers, and Albert Brooks is such a loser.
Yeah, he is. And he's the father in Weeds too, isn't he? And he's also like just as much a loser. He's always like the broke dad who's looking for money.
But in Weeds, he's like a little bit more of a scumbag.
Yeah, and you know what? He's doing okay too. Like Nancy really kind of messes things up for him. Like he was fine without her showing up.
Well, I mean, he just ends up like stealing Nancy's money and like embezzling her. Like he just like pays him like a silence fee.
That's right. It's been a little while. I need to watch Weeds again. Well, should we go on to number 2? I got my number 2 here.
Guys, I'm getting really nervous. Like I really hope. Let's see. Let's go.
My number 2 is Funny People.
Oh man, no.
Oh, so close.
Oh, I'm sorry, guys.
Did you guys both put Knocked Up as your number 2?
Knocked Up is my number 2.
I guess we're gonna have to make Knocked Up number 2. I don't think I have the voting power to switch you out.
Well, let's go ahead and get your thoughts on Knocked Up first.
Okay, so Knocked Up, and in case you haven't seen this movie, Seth Rogen is like a loser who lives with a bunch of other losers, and one night he somehow convinces Katherine Heigl, like he charms her, and they're both super drunk. They have unprotected sex, and then what happens? They have a child, and Katherine Heigl's like a producer for E, and her sister's Leslie Mann, and her husband's Paul Rudd. That's how those characters show up. And then basically the whole movie's just about, can he grow up to be a dad in the 9 months that they have? And will they, won't they, and all that good stuff. And that's more or less it. But Knocked Up, I think, the reason I had it as number 1 is I think this is the best, because again, the improv thing just weighs on me so much through all these movies. It just gets so tedious. But I think it works the best in this movie because the cast is just like perfect for it. Like Martin Starr, Jay Baruchel, Jason Segel, Jonah Hill, Seth Rogen, like the 5 of those guys in a room just like quipping at each other. It feels very natural, probably because they just do it all the time.
Yes.
So,
and Jay Baruchel too. He's amazing in this one too.
Yeah, he's so funny. All those guys are hilarious characters. They could have done a movie of just like those 4 after Seth Rogen moves out.
Oh, I would watch that 100%. I'm kind of upset that it doesn't exist now that you've said it.
They are the quintessential group of dudes living together after like the first year in college.
Yeah, that's what this reminds me of a lot. Like this reminds me of like moving out and just like hanging out with a bunch of dudes, like all live in the same apartment.
Oh man, that's such a nasty place that they live in.
Yeah, the apartment's gross. I do get a shout out though, because I also like the core cast is great, but then all the cameos are awesome too. Like Alan Tiddick is so funny in this movie as like her producer for E.
Oh yeah, that's right.
And then his assistant is Kristen Wiig, and they're both just like hilarious together. And then
They're
Harold
trying not to get a
Ramis-
lawsuit.
And also Harold Ramis is Seth Rogen's dad in this movie, and I think that's also awesome. Like he's just really funny as that role. They always have good dads in all these movies. Whenever one of the characters has dads, Judd Apatow picks a good dad. That's all I'm knowing. And
Like
often for himself.
And believable casting.
Yeah. They all kind of have a nice little like. They kind of look like each other. Like you could believe that they're related. This is just so random, but in this movie they make an Everybody Loves Raymond reference, where Paul Rudd's like, "This is like an episode Everybody Loves Raymond, but nobody's laughing." It's like a very unfunny episode of Everybody Loves Raymond. And they also make an Everybody Loves Raymond reference in 40-Year-Old Virgin when he gives them that box of adult films, and one of them is just Everybody Loves Raymond. And then Ray Romano shows up in Funny People, man. I don't know
That's
what it
true.
is, what his love with Ray
In
Romano
a
is.
really awkward series of cameos too.
Yeah.
Like Eminem looks really bad in that cameo.
Yeah, it does.
He looks fat and like he's just like really strange wearing like the Sean John and like the Air Jordan stuff. Like Raven and I were watching it, we were just like, is that Eminem? He looks disgusting.
I love that whole like cameo series so much. It's so enjoyable.
I don't know if there's much more I wanted to say about Knocked Up, though. I mean, I had it at number one because I just thought it had a little more heart than Funny People, and I think the pacing's a little bit better than Funny People. But I'm willing to concede to you two. I just did think it was cool that Judd Apatow like based a lot of this off his real life, and a lot of the events that happen are like what happened when Leslie Mann and him had their first child, Maud Apatow. That's what they named their older daughter. That's so mean.
That's a gross name.
A little girl to definitely grow up to be an old lady.
Yeah.
I also got to do a shout out to Craig Robinson's cameo in this movie. It's just amazing. Also at the height of The Office and him in The Office. Well, him in Pineapple Express too, I think right around the same time. But God, that's still like one of the best scenes in this movie. Just like him saying, I can't have a bunch of old pregnant people like up in this club. That's just bad parenting. Go home.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah, that is really good. Well, I guess Danny, give us our number one, which if people were keeping track is very obvious now.
Drum roll, please.
Y'all, I gotta say, this is gonna be a very short drum roll. Oh wow, Funny People is on Hulu. That's crazy. It's Funny People. Yeah, guys, I recently did the rewatch for this, and gotta say, although it does run into the Apatow problem of it being way too long, it is a banger upon a rewatch. I think the first watch for me wasn't that great, but the rewatch of it was just like, this is like peak Judd Apatow dramedy. I think like if I have to sum up why I love this movie, I think I was justifying it to Raven earlier too. It's just like, this is like one of those gems in storytelling that doesn't end in a particularly sad or a particularly happy note. It like, there's an arch from redemption from Adam Sandler for George Simmons's character. And he goes from being this totally narcissistic, like nihilistic dude into like kind of reconciling with himself and then totally returning to his ways. and nothing happened for the better except maybe Ira found himself, accepted himself, and found his voice. And that's really what was like the shining moment of this movie. It was just like, people don't really change.
No, I don't think that was the message 100% because he does reconcile with Ira at the end. I think he realized like, oh, well, if I just keep being like, even though I had this experience, if I just keep being the same crappy version of me, like nothing will change for the better. I'll just be lonely again. And I think that's why he went back with Ira. He's like,
definitely.
Like be alone forever. This sucks. I did one funny thing that happened to me because he is like this narcissistic, sad, rich dude is like while I was watching it in my head, I kept getting weird scenes of The Longest Yard like confused because like a rich, sad like quarterback in that movie, and like the things kept getting crossed like in my wires. I thought that was really funny.
You were like, don't they play football at the end of this movie? What's going on here?
Yeah, the part where Joey Coco Diaz comes in, I'm really excited to see Joey.
Oh yeah, I forgot that Joey Diaz is in that movie. This is the first time I ever saw Funny People. I've never seen it before.
What'd you think?
I thought it was good. I really enjoyed this one. I mean, I had it at number 2. I think it's a really strong story. And if you haven't seen it, it's basically just like Adam Sandler is a very successful comedian who gets diagnosed with a disease that he thinks he's going to die from. And he's been awful to all these people in his life. And he hires Seth Rogen, Ira, as his like comedy writer, but also just kind of like he needs like a friend. He like needs someone there with him, or he's gonna totally lose it.
It's
And
like
then after that,
the guise of a personal assistant kind of thing.
yeah. And the end of the movie just takes a total turn where it really just like the whole plot and setting, like I don't know, the third act is just a totally separate thing. It feels like it might even be half the movie almost.
Yeah.
But it's really good, and it's got Leslie Mann. I think this is like her biggest role where she's just more than the angry wife. Like that's most of her roles that she gets is just like the angry lady. But she
definitely gets angry in this movie. I think that's another part. In the part that she played in this movie was pretty amazing because it's like her being the love interest that got away from George Simmons was really interesting. But it's also just, I love that subversion of expectation of we're just supposed to expect George Simmons to like, okay, now I'm going to be a family man and be the stepdad to these people. And like, as I love that realization when they're watching Judd Apatow's like home video of her singing Cats. And you just like, you're like, okay, I can feel the Disney magic in all of this. And then all of a sudden it just changes. And like, you can see like George is just like putting on a front really. Yeah. And it's like really not what he wants. And you can kind of see it. And I love that scene where Leslie Mann is driving home. Or yeah, I think she's driving home and she's like starting to realize and like hyperventilate. Like this, I don't want to be with this guy. He did like just realizing everything that went wrong.
Yeah, I think that the Cats thing is just an awesome shot. Like it just because you have Seth Rogen who's so invested in it, he thinks it's so cute, and Adam Sandler, it's like he's interested in the idea of becoming a family man, but he hasn't gotten past that idea phase. Like he hasn't thought about it at all, like what that would have to entail. And he's just he's not made for it. He's not gonna be able to do it.
No, there's that scene where Leslie Mann is telling them like everything they need to do to like move out to LA, and you can see them like tightening up and like freaking out and realizing the gravity of the situation. She's like, no, like no pressure, like you don't have to do any of this stuff.
Yeah.
Like, oh my God.
And it's funny because it's like one of those that finally paints like the logistics of what would actually happen in like a crumbling household. You know what I mean? Like, this thing doesn't just happen overnight. It's like, okay, well, we're a family now. You know what I mean? Like I've got to quit my job. I got to move from San Francisco. The kid's got to be taken out of school. Like,
yeah, it's not one of the crappy family movies that exist in this universe of George Simmons that he's been in. Which is also fun. I feel like they poke a lot of fun at like the Adam Sandler thing. You know what I mean? Like he was this comedian and now he's just like putting out schlocky family films for the paycheck.
That redo poster and like the shots of Redo when he's a man baby with the man head is just so good.
And Merman, like, oh my God.
Yeah, and apparently he was like hesitant about the role because he thought that people were going to be equating like, oh, this movie's about Adam Sandler. Like this is Adam Sandler. But apparently it's more supposed to be about Judd Apatow. Which I also didn't know this, but Adam Sandler and Judd Apatow were college roommates.
Really? Huh.
Yeah.
So those tapes in the beginning
those are real. Those are from that time period. And they said that they would just make crank calls for like nights. Like they would just spend a whole night making crank calls and laughing about it. And there's a thing in the movie where Adam Sandler is saying that Leslie Mann used to like talk him to sleep. And apparently that's what Judd Apatow used to do to Adam Sandler. Like Adam Sandler would be tucked in bed and he would be like, Judd, bring up a chair, like some chair that he found outside that was getting like thrown away. And Judd Apatow would just sit in the chair and Adam Sandler would be like, tell me about 5th grade or something. And then Judd Apatow would just talk to him until he fell asleep, which seems like the weirdest roommate relationship I've ever heard of.
That's so cute.
I thought, go ahead.
Oh, well, I just wanted to say that, you know, my complaint with most of these movies is just how unimaginative they're shot. But this one, there is a couple things I thought were, I mean, maybe pretty textbook, but also funny. There's a couple of like zoom in on reactions of faces, which were pretty effective, like comedic wise. But also the beginning when Adam Sandler gets the diagnosis that he's like probably going to die, or that he has an unknown disease at least. They do the whole like
They know what the disease is.
Oh yeah, they do. They get this like soft focus on the shot, and then it's like the camera's like drifting, like it doesn't know exactly where to focus. Like Adam Sandler's having a hard time, which is what happens in every movie when someone gets diagnosed with something, or the audio gets all muffled and they're just like thinking or whatever. But at least it was something.
It's nice to see it in use, right?
Yeah, something was used.
Wow, you put some thought into the shot instead of just setting up a camera and capturing the actors in that space.
I think one of the most useful moments like that you're talking about, David, is when Adam Sandler and Ira or Seth Rogen have like their relationship established, and he's like his personal assistant, but he's like working on some stuff for him in his home office, and he's just like, hey, I'm working on a playlist for you, and they go through and it's like funny schlocky like songs, and he's like, all right, hit me with the deep cut, and then he puts on Warren Zevon's like Keep Me in Your Heart for a while, and there's a slow pan on Adam Sandler's face, and you can it kind of zooms back to Seth Rogen, and it's just like and then there's like this huge just like burst of wrath, just like, write me some freaking jokes, you moron.
Yeah. That is
it's
good.
effective though. It's really good.
Yeah, that's really solid.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say I thought it did a lot to like highlight. I guess I don't know this life much, but I felt like it did a lot to highlight what the world is like for a working comedian, and the moments aren't always funny. You know what I mean? You got to do what makes it work. And I wish we had our friend Jake Bonner on here, who's like an actual working comedian, but maybe he can give some insight. But I've lived with him for a while, and I can see like when I went to shows with him and stuff, like this felt a lot like what it was.
Yeah, I thought about that a lot, especially like when Ira wasn't doing super well, just like the awkwardness of it, or like him telling his friends like to come and like laugh hard. Never like ask of us, you know what I mean? But it's definitely
no. He would never be like, "I'll pay your cover," and he's like, "Okay, well, I got to take my wife too."
Yeah,
that would never happen, never in a million years.
Yeah, I was gonna say that too, though. I feel like they kind of nailed the stand-up comedy thing. And I was thinking about, like Joe Rogan talks about in his podcast all the time, like people who fall into the trap of doing really bad sitcoms on TV, and then their comedy chops go way down. But that's like what happens to Jonah Hill. He gets sucked into this.
Teach.
Yeah. Jonah Hill and Jason Schwartzman are Seth Rogen's roommates, and they're both on a TV show, which is essentially that Gabriel Iglesias show that was actually made on Netflix, where he's a teacher.
I didn't know that was a thing.
Yeah, and it looks really bad. I watched the first like 5 minutes because one night we were scrolling through Netflix and I was telling Michelle like, "What do you want to watch?" And then she was just joking around. She's like, "Oh, let's watch this Gabriel Iglesias. It's called like Mr. Fluffy or something like that."
Dude, I bet those 5 minutes of that actual show weren't as good as that 6-minute intro of that that soap opera from like Saudi Arabia or something that you stumbled on. Dan, intro for that show is like legit like 5-6 minutes long.
Yeah, it's called The Eagle of El Said. I just clicked on it on Netflix just to be like, what is this? You know what I mean? I was scrolling down and it just was at the bottom of the list, and dude, it's just like 7 minutes of cinematic shots of like Saudi Arabia or something. I don't know where it's at,
and like credits.
So amazing. It's
Jason Schwartzman has like a really good ability to play a jerk, man.
Oh yeah,
he's great.
Top notch.
So good at it.
His second podcast in a row where he plays the role of a jerk.
Oh, that's right, from Scott Pilgrim.
Yeah.
I really like when they're at the Thanksgiving and everybody's fighting outside and Seth Rogen goes to walk in, he just hits him one more time. He's like, and I still can't believe you slept with that girl, and he's just like, what? Like, like how could you be mad at me for like? I don't understand.
I gave you the 10 days. I don't know.
Yeah. You gave him longer than 10 days.
Yeah, he did.
21 days, man.
Aubrey Plaza just does a really good job. You could finally see that she was like really starting to like, they were giving her larger roles to like try and branch out and giving her more dialogue and stuff.
Mm.
Two
One
Parks and Rec people.
about like this universe is like that points out like how dated it is, and it's really prominent in this movie because of the George Simmons character. But like the flip phones, man, just the sound of a flip phone snapping open and snapping shut.
Yeah, that's
Brought back some
true.
memories.
The last time you could really hang up on someone, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Thump.
Do miss that.
Well, I mean, unless you guys have anything else, I think this is our official Apatow ranking. I think we've reached it together with very little controversy.
Pretty official. We didn't hit the perfect stride quite yet, but maybe we'll get there one day.
So this weekend, the weekend this podcast comes out, King of Long Island comes out.
King of Staten Island.
King of Staten Island, Judd Apatow's newest movie. So, I mean, whenever we watch it, we'll have to just chime in and let you all know. Was it awful or was it pretty good?
We release this episode. Everybody will wear the same shirts. We'll record a chunk
There we
again. We'll figure out how to edit it. We'll do the post.
I read just like the headline of a review of that movie, and it was like, effective Judd Apatow movie a little too long or something like that was like the title of the review. And I was like, well,
Oh, cool. So it's going to be one of his better ones.
yeah. Yeah.
I didn't know the movie was supposed to be about him. It's supposed to be about Pete Davidson, loosely autobiographical.
Well, yeah, because I know it's like Pete Davidson's dad is a firefighter who dies in the movie, and that's what happens in
9/11. Yeah.
But apparently they left the 9/11 thing out. I don't know.
One of the things I learned on our journey, just to kind of like wrap up that whole section for me, and we discussed this earlier, David, I learned that I'm not as big a fan of Judd Apatow as I thought.
Yeah, I gotta agree, man.
He's got some good stuff. Like you had said, his series work is like the best of it, I think. But he's got
better in a producing role.
Yeah.
I feel, you know.
Well,
It's
I just watched Bridesmaids with Michelle, and that's produced by Judd Apatow, and that
movie's
killer.
great. Yeah, that movie's awesome, man. But he also produced so many movies. He did like you said, like Anchorman. He did
Get Him to the Greek, Pineapple Express.
Exactly.
Yeah, all banger comedies.
Yeah, Walk Hard, the Dewey Cox story. Wow.
Also amazing.
Kicking and Screaming. Whoa.
Yikes.
Great. It's got some moments.
Drill Bit
Also,
Taylor.
Anchorman
Wow.
2. There's definitely a projection where things dip.
Yeah, it reaches a point and then it gets a little shaky. Well, I guess if that's all we have for Judd Apatow, it's time for Oh, that's interesting, everyone. And I've gotten the article for y'all today, and I gave you a little bit of a choose your own adventure before we started recording. One was about Judd Apatow.
I don't want you branding things that way. We know that choose your own adventures don't work well on it.
Yeah, sorry. I shouldn't refer to that anymore on this channel. That was a dark time.
I just don't even want to think about it.
Judd Apatow had made some remarks about Donald Trump this week, literally like today on Twitter, and I just felt like, you know, aren't we all? You know what I mean? You know, it wasn't anything like too crazy. But what I decided to go with, and I'm sure you guys have heard about this, but this is from May 20th. This is an article on The Verge. I want to thank HBO Max and Warner Brothers for this brave gesture of supporting artists and allowing their true visions to be realized. Also, a special thank you to all those involved in the Snyder Cut movement for making this a reality. Not Batman v Superman. Justice League Snyder Cut is coming to HBO Max, everybody. After everyone complained on the internet, begging for this thing to be released, it's finally coming out, and I wanted to see what you guys thought. What were your reactions?
Is this Judd Apatow saying this, or is this your... saying...
Sorry, this is Zack Snyder saying that statement. Yeah, maybe I didn't make that clear.
So Zack Snyder is hyping Zack Snyder for his own cut of his film.
Yeah, and to give you just a rough timeline, here's what happened. Zack Snyder was pretty much in charge of the DCEU since Man of Steel. Some people like it, some people really don't like it. And then, unfortunately, and this is really tragic, Zack Snyder's daughter died while they were working on Justice League. So he decided to step away from the role, And in order to finish the movie, they brought in Joss Whedon, who did Avengers and also like Firefly and Buffy and all this other stuff. But when Joss Whedon came in, obviously he kind of changed the tone of the movie and re-edited a bunch of it, and they did some reshoots. So what ended up getting released was like half Zack Snyder, half Joss Whedon. And ever since that movie came out and did terribly, DC fans are like, we want a Snyder cut. Give us this, however long, and it says over here, still determining whether the director's cut will be released as a nearly 4-hour-long film or divided up into a 6-part series.
My goodness.
We're talking about...
This is the same thing that happened with Dawn of Justice. It's like there was a theatrical release and people were like, well, that was crap. Let's wait for the uncut release. And then they had an uncut release, which is longer and worse.
I remember Brandon telling me one time, he was like, yeah, because we were talking about it on the podcast. I was like, man, I haven't seen any of these movies. And he was like, you know what? If you're going to watch Batman v Superman, you got to watch the director's cut. It's longer, but you know what? It's pretty good. like, dude, I don't want to watch a 3.5 hour long edit of a movie.
Especially not pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah, right? It's like, Lord of the Rings. Imagine if Lord of the Rings was awful. Like just a terrible movie. And someone was like, oh, we have the extended edition. It's more of the same, but
there is that. It's The Hobbit.
Yeah, I guess that's true, huh? The Hobbit it's the Batman v Superman of Lord of the Rings.
It's really bad. But if the theatrical version isn't good, adding an hour onto it isn't going to make it better. And adding 3 more hours onto it, maybe even in series format, that's going to be worse. Because, like...
It's like having a child to save a failing marriage.
Exactly.
Wow.
But, like, it makes you think. All right, just to throw out a devil's advocate, like, conspiracy theory here. What if Joss Whedon came into the DCEU, albeit amidst a tragedy. However, he purposely sabotaged from the inside. That's like letting Russia in your own elections.
I don't know how that ends up.
Well, there's only 2 movies, you know what I mean? It's like there's Avengers and Justice League. These are the only 2 times this kind of thing's been done. And it's like, well, who directed Avengers? Who wants to make sure this is remembered as the best team up of all time? Let's get that guy to drive the ship.
The guy from the red team.
Yeah.
It just doesn't make sense. That movie's so bad.
I still haven't seen it. So I can't be just totally like dogging on it, but have you
seen it, Frank?
I have no interest.
No, why would I watch it? I don't care. When David asked for initial reactions, my initial reaction was like, I don't care at all. Like, I feel nothing. Superhero.
I just think it's hilarious because I can't wait to see what everyone's excuse is going to be, because I think this comes out May 17th. Oh, wait, no, it can't be May 17th. That would already be out.
June? Is it June 17th? No, it's next year. It doesn't come out till like next year.
Oh, yeah. May 27th of next year.
Oh, that's
wow, we have to wait another year.
Yeah, and it's like by the time this comes out, first off, maybe no one will care about this anymore. But then secondly, it's like, it's still going to be bad. It's not going to be like, oh, yay, it's fixed. You know what I mean? It's perfect. I highly doubt it.
What an achievement in cinema history.
However, I do know of one individual who runs a comic podcast who might say differently. Who might say, oh, well, it's much better now.
I'm sure Brandon...
A well-documented idiot.
Yeah, we have the clips to prove that. I'm sure that... I don't know. I feel like Brandon, he's not that blind. It's going to be...
He did love Guru.
We'll bring him on to do compare and contrast.
I got to say, it's kind of a bummer, like, in a retrospective sense of just, like, there are a wealth of great character developments, stories from the DC universe that could be great on screen and that have been great on screen, but they just don't have the light of day and they just can't pull it off.
I think they just tried to go too far too fast. They were like, we got to catch up, and they should have just done things at their own pace. Not worried about, can we cram in dark side into this movie? And then what happens? You end up with a big steaming pile of poop.
I feel like you need to watch it, though.
Yeah, to be fair, I should watch it, but I don't think I will.
Like it.
I've already watched Trainwreck against my will, and I don't think I'm going to do that. Anything else, Only movies.
Did you own that one, or did you have to rent?
I had to rent it, and then it hurt even more that I couldn't find I would have liked to have been able to find a used DVD of Trainwreck, so I know that Amy Schumer didn't get any money for me watching the movie. But I think about, man, I had to pay like $4 to rent this. Man, what percentage does Amy Schumer get?
Too much.
Too much.
Too much for sure.
Well, everyone,
Snyder cut.
Snyder cut. Snyder cut.
I will say that I do like the tooting of one's own horn. I like it's cringy, but I love it.
So excited. It's like he's got an army next to him.
Yeah.
Zack Snyder, please save us. Save the Justice League. He's like, I got it, boys. Don't worry. It's gonna be awful.
Remember when I did that one superhero movie right in 2009?
Yeah, right. Like, and I've said, I don't know. I feel like maybe I was telling Brandon this on his podcast. Zack Snyder legitimately has 3 good movies: 300, Watchmen, and Dawn of the Dead. And that's it. And then there's a bunch of other movies, and they're all pretty bad and pretty plain. So I don't know.
Sin City is whatever.
Sin City's Robert Rodriguez.
Oh, it's not even him. Okay, well that's all right.
There you go.
Point taken.
Why you accepted it so much?
Okay, well, let's close this one out, boys. It's time for Peeps and Predicts.
Sick. For those of you unfamiliar with Peeps and Predicts, we will pick a pair of peeps, or people, if you will, real or fictional, that we have paired together in some sort of theme, or maybe we would just like to see them do something together. And then we'll face off in a series of predicts or predicaments, if you will. If you have any suggestions for peeps or predicts for us to throw in those jars, send us an email at davidandfrankandbeans@gmail.com.
Okay, so today for our peeps, we have what could potentially be a sticky situation. We have Scott Pilgrim versus the world. So let's see what our first predicament is. Sorry, these are they're like on sticky notes, so part of them are stuck together. Interesting. I drew a peep from the predicts jar.
No, that's a predict.
So one was, I don't know. We could argue Eli Roth versus Robert Rodriguez. That's what the other one was. I don't know how that argument would start. Who's more likely to make it to the end? Oh,
I think we were talking about the world's end.
yeah, this is the Golden Mile. No, we already had that one. I think this is in reference to a horror movie. I'm pretty sure.
Oh.
Like, who's more likely to make it to the end of the horror movie? Which
Scott Pilgrim.
I don't know how this works. Yeah, I mean,
I would say the world because there's more of them.
But they don't have superpowers like Scott Pilgrim does.
Some of them do.
and what is the clarification? Like, does the entire world have to make it? You know what I mean? Can they let a few million die? Is that okay?
Yeah.
Or
does
does it have to be the world in its entirety?
Well, if you lose an arm, you're not dead.
That's true, but if Scott Pilgrim makes it through scot-free, then I mean that would technically be better than the world losing an arm, quote unquote.
I like this man's argument because it was punny.
I appreciate it. Very purposeful move I'm making over here.
Pandering, and I will not stand for it.
You know what? I feel like I gotta side Scott Pilgrim, man. I just feel like the world, things don't work out in the world all the time. Scott Pilgrim is just a sweet Canadian boy who's a little misguided.
I think a lot works out in the Scott Pilgrim world.
Yeah.
For Scott Pilgrim.
And just to jump ship and jump on the other side, I will. As a world, we're not great at like the cohesive teamwork, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. If the world was put into a real life horror scenario. Like, let's say there was like a deadly disease in the entire world. You know what I mean? Would everyone go home and follow the stay-at-home order? Would everyone wear masks out in public? Would there be any kind of, arguably, maybe not everyone would be on the same page. You know what I mean? Maybe people would be peddling conspiracy theories, like the president. I'm just saying.
I mean, the only reason we won War of the Worlds was because we're so dirty and disease-ridden.
Dang, that's a good point. That's a good point.
It's a great movie.
Okay, well, I guess we'll go ahead and go with...
Cruise movie is a great movie.
That's the closest one, maybe. We got to do a Tom Cruise movie ranking. Just to
I hate watching that man on screen. I hate it so much.
I hate it too.
There's a fat recovery period after every Tom Cruise movie you watch.
Yeah, and I'm still like, the last one I watched was a couple years ago, so I still need a few years.
Yeah,
I watched Minority Report, so it wasn't that bad. But then before that, I watched Mission Impossible, the latest one. That was maybe about 3 years ago. So I had a hot detox period.
With the one exception being The Outsiders, because it's great.
and he's barely in it, so that's another big part of it. And he looks so goofy in that movie.
Walking down the street, because it's so much.
Yeah. Okay, well, I guess old Scotty Pilgrim's got this first one.
Get it, Scott.
Number 2, round 2. Who's the better speed dater?
Between the world or Scott Pilgrim?
Yeah, between the world and Scott Pilgrim.
Scott Pilgrim is not the best at dating.
No, or first impressions, I feel like.
Yeah, he's pretty bad.
Yeah, he makes a lot of the wrong moves, like dating 17-year-olds and, telling them.
I mean, like, just the all-encompassing nature of the world. I mean, like, we could be talking about Ricky Martin here. I bet he's a fantastic first date.
We could be talking about all the dudes on the dating shows that coach Date Mike in The Office, who are pros, arguably, at what they do.
That's a good point. But then, arguably, aren't we also including, like, Charles Manson? And, like...
Hey, he had a lot of followers. He was probably really good on first dates.
What about all the...
charismatic.
What about all the people who submitted really cringy speed dating tapes? Like, all those people in the mix, too.
So, those wouldn't be ideally the best speed date, but it would be a date that you would talk about forever. You would have that story forever.
You know what? I'll have to agree with you guys, though, because I think Scott Pilgrim, his greatest weakness are his words.
And the numbers stack up against him in that case.
Too,
Yeah, he's really making a lot of poor choices. Okay, so then tiebreaker round for Scott Pilgrim versus the world. I'm trying to open the ceremonial paper. Who's got the best plan for surviving the zombie apocalypse? And can if I could just start this off, I think this is an open and shut case, guys, because the world never survives the zombie apocalypse. That is the one trend that makes it the apocalypse. So, like, maybe a couple people do, but the world as a whole, no way. Like, Scott Pilgrim would have a way better chance.
I mean, let's just go ahead and say, what if COVID was a zombie apocalypse?
Oh, no.
There's been a lot of dying going on.
It's true. Very World War Z.
No, I feel like David makes the perfect argument for this. Like, just like you said, it's an open and shut, man. The world ends in an apocalypse. That's what makes it an apocalypse.
Well, we're going to have a great matchup here because Scott Pilgrim is now going against our reigning champ. And I need everyone to visualize this in their head. Michael Cera as Scott Pilgrim, wearing that little Smashing Pumpkins t-shirt, versus the Hound from Game of Thrones.
I forgot that's our reigning champ.
Okay, and for our last
Fight to the death.
predicament of the night. Who makes a better stand-in husband for Leslie Mann / the Little Apatow girls? So... Judd Apatow loves putting other men in his position. I think honestly though, just because he's not a very good actor, I think it's.
Some would argue he is the most famous cuckold.
Oh my gosh, that's what I was trying to dance around, but Danny, you landed it perfectly.
Danny danced right through there.
Yeah, he did.
So graceful.
I'm gonna go ahead and say Scott Pilgrim, man. I think that not only does he have like the mentality of a man in a Judd Apatow movie, just like very self-centered and not thinking about anyone else. But I also just got to shout out, there's a hilarious, they made it for the movie. It's not like a deleted scene. It's like a little joke where it's like Michael Cera cast as Seth Rogen's role in Knocked Up. and they shot a bunch of scenes as like Michael Cera being there, and he's just delivering it really flat, like low energy. And Judd Apatow keeps telling him, Michael, we got to get more energy from you. So then he just starts talking louder, and he's like, no, not louder, more energy. And then he keeps getting louder and louder and louder, and it goes back and forth. And then Michael Cera just explodes on him, and he's just like, I don't know what you want. You keep telling me more energy, and I keep bringing that. I keep bringing exactly what you're telling me to do, and then you hate it. And I don't even know why we're doing takes. There are like 10 gold takes already done. And then he just like walks off the set. It's like really, really funny. And it's on the DVD special feature. But I'm sure it's also on YouTube somewhere. It's just hilarious. And Katherine Heigl looks so uncomfortable for the whole thing.
She's not the most pleasant person in the world. That's for sure.
Doesn't sound like it. As much as I would like to see the mountain.
The Hound.
The Hound, excuse me. I mean, the mountain too.
That would be interesting.
I feel like you'd end up with the same dynamic we have with John Cena and Amy Schumer. You know what I mean? It just like wouldn't make sense or fit like at all.
I think John Cena is a lot nicer than the Hound would be as a husband.
Oh yeah, and then the last argument too is that Michael Cera is just one person removed from the cast of the Judd Apatow gang. Like he's not in any of the movies that he directed, but he's in a lot of the ones he produced, and he just like fits in with that whole grouping.
And you know what? Since we're talking about Apatow right now, and I forgot while we were talking about all the movies, but one cameo that I wanted to shout out because it was like so quick at the luncheon that they're having for Doctors Without Borders in Trainwreck. The mom from Freaks and Geeks is there, Jen Weir. Like in the crowd, you can see her like big red hair. I was like, oh,
that's so cool. The dad shows up and Knocked Up too. He's one of the doctors.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I love seeing those guys.
Also, a crazy cameo in Funny People, they have the bad guy from Die Hard as the doctor.
Well,
who they say looks like he's from Die Hard.
Is it really him?
I'm pretty sure it's him.
I didn't think it was him. I thought that was just a joke. Okay, you got to look that up.
Yeah, we got to check now. Now I'm so...
But, I mean, I think that more or less brings us to the end of our episode, everybody. Scott Pilgrim's our reigning champ, which feels right. And while Danny's looking this up... Huh?
I mean, we did it. We the list is official. The peeps have been predict.
Yeah, we've been interesting and said, oh. So if you guys have any suggestions, peeps and predict suggestions, maybe movies or directors you want us to cover, or just anything film, shoot us an email at davidandfrankandbeans@gmail.com. Send us one of those YouTube comments, or we're on Facebook, Instagram. And, if you like the podcast, just tell a friend. Help us out here. And we appreciate y'all listening to another movie ranking episode.
And
I stand corrected. It is not him.
It can just be a random person you see, like in your daily life. Just yell at them. Hey, listen to Uninformed Movie Reviews, wherever podcasts are available.
Boom.
Just yell it out as fast as you can, too. Just say, David and Frank and Beans!